We're honored to have someone that has become one of my favorite people. And Rev, as you get to know him, you'll find he will occupy that same position with you. And I'm talking about Chief John Esposito, who's Chief of Department of FDNY. And one of the most knowledgeable people I've come across over the years. He has, a stellar background. You don't just become a chief overnight. I was talking to Commissioner Cassano, who's a loyal listener of the program, and he says, John Esposito, one of the best. And you talk to John Esposito, who says, Commissioner Cassano, one of the best. So the fact that they're linked that way, we're very fortunate to have. Chief Esposito, good morning to you.
Welcome.
Good morning, Rabbi, and good morning, Reverend. It's great to be talking to you, and I'm very happy to be on and talk about what we do in the fire department.
So, Chief, a building in Manhattan was posing a grave danger to the tenants, to surrounding buildings. Here on, 42nd and 2nd or 43rd and 2nd?
Sure. It was a very large building. So it actually fronted on 2nd Avenue, fronted on 42nd Street, and then went through and also had a small part that fronted on 43rd Street.
How does a building get into such critical condition and it wasn't detected earlier?
So it was, part of the conversions that we're seeing since COVID of more and more commercial buildings to residential. So it was, reported it was the former headquarters for Pfizer, purchased a few years ago with a large, a very large scale project to convert it to residential. And part of that was to add several floors to it. So you can imagine this huge building with a big construction project. It looks like they added several floors to it at some time in the past, and we responded to a call for bricks falling from the building, which was determined to be the old facade, some bricks in the street. We knew that it was a significant incident when we arrived, and many of the construction workers were already out in the street. Our trades workers in the city are, pretty rough and tumble, tough guys. For them to leave a building like that, we knew that that's a sign for us that there's something significant going on.
Chief, when FDNY goes into a building, one of these major high-rise buildings, do you have to know in advance the internal structure? If you're going to fight whatever the problem is, you have to know more than just looking at the building from the outside, obviously.
You do want to know how the building's built. And, we classify high-rise buildings, lightweight, medium weight, and heavyweight. So think of the Empire State Building. It was a steel frame building with all the steel encased in concrete. That is a heavyweight, older type building. Right after World War II, an Army bomber flew into the Empire State Building, and the Empire State Building really didn't suffer much damage. Obviously, there were some fatalities and a significant fire, but the building, held it. Mm-hmm. Over the years, and construction practices change, the redundancy, it's less and less redundancy because it's more and more engineered. And, you get a lighter weight building where the steel is not encased in concrete. It has spray-on fireproofing, and it's generally then just the steel and Q decking and a poured concrete floor, which is significantly lighter. But yes, these are all things that we, as we're fighting a fire in a building or dealing with a structural stability issue that we figure out pretty quickly.
Yeah. Not to mention the damage King Kong did to the Empire
I knew
State
he would
Building.
go there.
Who doesn't remember that scene when you think of the Empire State Building? Rev?
Yeah, I'm curious because, when we see buildings, giving way like that, I won't say collapse, giving way like that, we're still 25 years later. We're going to celebrate the 25th anniversary of 9/11, the collapse of those towers. And there's so many conspiracy theories that are still, out there concerning, how the towers collapse and whatnot. Help us understand if it's okay. I want to be careful not to put you into, an awkward place. But are any of these things making sense, or is it, shut and close deal as to what happened with how that
Well,
those buildings fell?
yeah, no, in my mind, there's no mystery, right? So when you realize how the World Trade Center buildings were built, that would be an example of lightweight high-rise construction. And,
Hmm.
growing up in New York, and I imagine you guys may have heard this too, that, the World Trade Center buildings, the Twin Towers, were built to withstand the impact of a plane. And
Hmm.
I remember hearing that. And, well, they did. They withstood the impact. I guess they didn't think that there was going to be fuel in those planes. When the steel gets heated up, it weakens, right? Starting at 1,000 degrees, steel starts losing its strength, and
Hmm.
it can't hold what's above it. And whether it's 100 feet in the air or 1,000 feet in the air, when it loses the strength and it can't hold what's above it, it's going to fall. And I think there was a general sense that day that these buildings can't fall. And obviously, after the first one fell, it was clear that yes, they can, and that and obviously they both fell. But it's looking back now and what we know and how that happened. To me, it's not a surprise now that they fell. There, the steel was not encased in concrete. It had spray-on
Hmm.
fireproofing, which we know has varying levels of effectiveness.
We're going to take a
We've
break.
got to go to we've got to go to a break because I have a follow-up question to that. Stay tuned for more of the Rev and the Rabbi right here on your Sunday morning on Red Apple Radio Network.
Follow-up question. I think Perry Mason used to
Yeah,
say that. Follow-up, right? It's a tricky
our
one.
guest, Chief John Esposito from FDNY. Yeah, so, look, again, conspiracy theories will go on and theories will go on and on and on, but you said something important, the difference between new construction where the beams are surrounded and cased in concrete, which is going to add to greater strength. But does jet fuel have the ability to spread downward so quickly, carrying intense heat that, the building can collapse like that?
So, all these buildings have elevator shafts in them. And, if you remember a few years ago, we had a helicopter crash on a foggy day, fly into the side of one of our office buildings in Manhattan.
Right.
Yeah.
The concern was if the fuel from the helicopter got to the bottom of that elevator shaft. And we have reports on 9/11 of some of the jet fuel going down the elevator shaft, burning people in the elevator.
Mm.
And I don't know how many elevators there were in the building. I don't know the number offhand, but it's in my mind, knowing building construction, it's totally reasonable that some of that jet fuel that was burning got down some of those elevator shafts. That to me seems reasonable.
So,
Yeah,
so
me
Chief,
too. Yeah.
let me ask you. I'm looking for an apartment, for example, and all these buildings are being converted, and I think to myself, well, let me look at the history of this building before the apartments were finalized, and I read, wow, this happened, that happened. How do I feel secure when there's been, some defect at the time in the construction?
Well, our Department of Buildings is great. I am sure that they are going to, whatever remedy they come up with and the plan that they will review and approve. I am 100% sure that that building will be safe and there'll be no issue. I don't have the expertise to know what that whole plan would be, but that raises a very interesting question. New York is a big city and it's an old city, and you can ask that question of anybody that lives in the city. What happened in your building?
Yeah.
What happened in your apartment? Some of these buildings, many buildings in New York are over 100 years old.
That's a great follow-up, because I was going to ask you, you walk down the street and you see air conditioning units outside of windows. You see a facade that looks, it's worn. And, we take it for granted. We walk through. But the other side of that is that there is a concern. So there are inspections, periodic inspections. People look at buildings through buildings departments and say, hey, wait a minute, there's a potential risk here on these old buildings.
Well, and the old buildings that get renovated, I mean, you think of the buildings up and down, say, 2nd Avenue in the 70s and 80s, on the east side of Manhattan.
Right.
Those are old law tenements that were built, some of them in the 1890s, right? 2 centuries ago, 130, 140 years ago. And they get renovated over time, and they get inspected, and they're in good shape. But we could have that problem with newer construction as well, with water leaks and building components rotted, and so there's always a concern. We have a great buildings department, we have a great fire department, and when there's a problem, we come out and look at it and investigate and issue orders to have it repaired and fixed.
Yeah.
Chief, let me ask not even a sci-fi question, but a technology question. How advanced is technology that can be placed in a way to look at these buildings and kind of see into the infrastructure of the buildings? Are we there yet, where we can put an X-ray on it and see the beams or whatever? Are we there?
That I don't know. I know that we use technology. We use our drones. We can fly. And in this collapse last week on 42nd Street, we in fact had our drones out there flying, and we're able to put them right up on that floor and really get a good picture of what's going on inside that building in cases. And we're able to evaluate and assess multiple floors much quicker than putting our firefighters up there. And certainly if it's a more dangerous situation, we don't want to put our firefighters in. We're able to do that from the outside. So the drone technology continues, to advance. As far as, being able to see, see through the wall board or the sheathing, we're not using that technology at this time. And a lot of times that wall board, if that is, cracked or ripped or broken, that's to us is an indication that there's a structural problem in the building, because as the building settles and moves, that wall board or those bricks or whatever are gonna show signs of damage. So we use that as a as an indicator of a problem.
So, Chief, personal question. You could have done many things during your lifetime, and you chose to go to FDNY. We can ask the same thing of NYPD. You chose to put your life at risk. Why?
Well, it's the only thing I ever wanted to do since I was, a little kid. You see, I guess a lot of kids want to grow up and be firemen, and it's the way it worked out for me. And I think I was telling you last week, Rabbi, when you said you had gone to law school, I spent a year in law school when I was a young firefighter, and had a decision to make. Am I going to continue with law school and look to make that a career, or stay here? And I made the decision to stay here, and think it worked out all right.
New York is better for you. Yeah.
It's a job that you want to do, and
it's a calling.
Crazy
I think it's really
sounds.
a calling.
Yes, I was going to say that. Yeah, there's a sense of calling. Go ahead, Chief, please.
No, I'm sorry. Just as crazy as it sounds, we love it and enjoy it. So.
Yeah, it's true. I wish we had more time. I was looking at a podcast that you were on, the Salty Paramedic. I don't know if you remember, but you were on it and talking about leadership, legacy, and life at the firehouse. Quickly, leadership and legacy. Give us parting words on that.
We know that our people want good leadership, and I guess when your time is done, how do you want to be thought of, and what your legacy to be, and just that you did the right thing, and you looked out after your people, and you protected them, and you did the job the right way, and made those that came before you proud. If and you always think of what we lost on September 11th, and it's almost like you those are the guys that are judging you, and you just hope that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
Wow.
Chief John
Great way to look
Esposito.
at it.
Let me just tell you, John,
Yeah.
how much people appreciate a rabbi at FDNY. It was a fire years ago. On Carroll Street. And I remember rushing there, and the guys were in the ambulance. Open the door of the ambulance, and they look at me and say, "Oh, thank God it's you," because when we see a priest, we're really nervous. But having a rabbi, now we'll be okay. So you see, it's good to have a rabbi.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Of course. Well, go ahead, Chief. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. We have Rabbi Potasnik is the chief chaplain for the FDNY, and every time he shows up and the weather is nice, he takes credit for the weather. So
of course he does.
We appreciate all of that, Rabbi. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great to have you.
Of course.
In a professional and a personal relationship. John Esposito, Chief of Department, FDNY. The city of New York is blessed to have this kind of talent.
Amen to that. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.